The topic for us today is, you know all of them, I'm not introducing them. They are stalwarts, they run the show of the law firms, what happens in India. And they are the people who have actually shined through this entire pandemic phase, which had been challenging nonetheless. And they will individually talk about what has shaped up, what is happening. So both law and running of law firms. That is something they will discuss. Before we say, I'll take one by one. I'll tell my own personal thing that in February 2020, there was a request for a Zoom call. And I said, what is that? And I was not aware about it. And I think most of us were not aware about it. That what is this technology called Zoom call or Microsoft Team or something? It was not happening. Most of the meetings were being done in a real term. So it's a big leap which has happened, or big disruption, whatever you call it. And whether it's a small law firm or a big law firm or a law firm office, it has been challenging. It has been transforming. So hear from them. I will come to Mr. Sharaf first, because you have seen this from a large firm perspective and then your own large firm now. What has happened in 1.5 years and what is going to be the future now?
If you actually think about it, it was just 2020-21, the second quarter of 2020-21, the GDP in India, there was a degrowth of 24%. And today we are talking about a 10% GDP growth. And I think that is what we need to understand. And once we understand that, we understand why the legal business has changed dramatically. Really, eventually, what was the problem in India? The problem was physical infrastructure. And therefore, productivity of people was very low. What has changed is technology. I think we don't need physical infrastructure, but if you have technology, platform, and ability to adapt it, like you did not know Zoom. I actually, first time I got introduced to Zoom, I have a 12-year-old daughter. I'm a 55-year-old man with a young daughter. So I walked into the room and suddenly saw the whole class on a computer. I could never understood what this issue was. And then I understood that how technology has changed. And this is a very important part, that today people have access to information. You are able to grow productively without wasting time. And I would say what has really changed also is that there is a lot of, I would say, connectivity. People can actually do global work, things like that. The aspiration for lawyers in India, like Mr. Karanjawala talked about, I think that will change dramatically. People will start realizing that if you are able to hire young people, lawyers, even on the litigation side, you have to pay them well. Yeah. Because it's not that they're not productive. They are not just being paid. And I would say that is what going to change.
Yes.
That the ownership in management, the ownership in equity, the upside, because that transparency was never there in the legal profession. And this is what has changed dramatically.
Good initial thought, sir. But we also have to remember that when they talk about the hybrid legal system, Justice Chandrachud said this week only that it's very lonely out here. We want to see all of you. And there's a lot of personal touch which is missing in this whole hybrid thing. Manojji, what do you think about how much personal touch we have lost, and this hybrid which has now become more of a norm, how much fundamentally it is going to be the same for years to come post-pandemic also?
Well, I want to step back pre-pandemic and then answer the question. It's all about transformation. I think that's Dr. Bhasin talked about in the morning. I was not here, but I listened to his entire discussion, and also Akhil's, that you have to always constantly change, and therefore that is the way to grow. You have to break the status quo. When pandemic struck, none of us knew that we have something like this around the corner. Taking our own example, I can only talk about myself. We started off in 2001 as a small boutique firm. in a Barsati in New Delhi Defense Colony. And in 2017, we were ranked number 13 by Asian Legal Business in India. Now, this journey, as Anurag was talking about it, gradually there are firms which are growing up in addition to the traditional big firms. This entire journey, and including the issue of handling surprises like pandemic and the need for technology to be a part of your day-to-day life, all this comes from an approach of transformation. If you have that in your DNA, it becomes far more easier to handle it. So in our case particularly, why I spoke so much, around 2018 or so, we had undertaken huge transformations in the way we were internally using technology. Our database, our mail servers, cloud-based, etc., etc. The only thing that came in addition was the video conferencing, the Zoom part of it, right? So the preparedness came more because of the approach that we had. The other part about personal touch that you're talking about, if we look at all the stakeholders, if you look at the clients, I think they are far happier. They have far deeper access in terms of transparency in judicial proceedings. A client is there on the screen for every hearing. And not only that, top to bottom, right from the management or the board level person who wants to have a peek into the hearing to the person who's briefing the counsel, everybody can have access. So transparency is a big, big takeaway from the virtual hearing. From the team's perspective, as lawyers, if you have not skilled your team on communication, communicating with a client or a person in person, face to face, is far, far different from communicating with somebody virtually. Yeah. Whether you're communicating with a judge or communicating with a potential client. Yeah. So those kind of skillings, if you bring about, I think it's a win-win for everyone. It's very much here to stay.
Absolutely. And talking about this journey, like the digitization of the files and returning the files, physical files to the client, was something which used to happen post-lockdown in most of the law firms. Because you digitize thousands of files. In fact, in my firm, we returned close to 700-800 old files, which were just lying there occupying so much of a space. But Saket, you had no such challenge because you are a transactional lawyer. And you were going to the board meetings, you were flying Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, is the kind of work which was happening, being a M&A lawyer. How much change has happened in the corporate sector as such? Also with regard to the board meetings and with regard to corporate bigger teams sitting together, and how efficient it has been. I presume that technology would be much easier there than our courts, where a lot of glitches are there. And are you comfortable with this?
Yes, Sudhir, I mean, technology has had a big impact. Sorry. Yeah, so technology obviously had a big impact on the deal side of things. If you look at pre-pandemic, December 2020, the private equity and M&A was at its lowest in India. If you look at it in 2021, right now, first 9 months of this year, it's 70 odd billion worth of deals that have been done. What does that show us, right? At the time this pandemic happened, you had Xerox backing out, citing COVID, as a thing for I think a $34 billion transaction across HP. There was SoftBank, which was looking to do a deal with VWorks. They backed out. That citing that as the reason the transaction didn't happen. But you come to this particular year and you see what has happened is that the deal cycle is at its highest, right? It's a 35% increase from last year. What does that really indicate? That indicates that the ability to adjust to the new environment was something that everyone caught on to. If you couldn't adjust, you weren't there in the game. Pre-pandemic, you had deals where you had multiple advisors. The default option was a conference call. Conference call also in the traditional mode, you had a dial-in number, you had a set of dial-in numbers and people from different jurisdictions dialed in. That changed. You had virtual meetings, different advisors. Clients are far more compliance conscious, so you don't have just lawyers and investment bankers in the room. You have accountants, you have technical advisors, you have other consultants. I think overall efficiency is increased. people have also started realizing the merit in just doing virtual meetings. Deals have started getting closed quicker. So I think in the run-up post pandemic, the one thing that's happened is people's ability to
Adjust.
adopt to the new environment. And that's, I think, in a way, that's going to stay. It's although we are partly back to the old mode as well,
Yes.
right? The Companies Act now allows for virtual meetings, and so it's always going to be hybrid.
Yeah.
It is. There's too much of digital infrastructure now in place, too much of investment that has taken place for it to just be ignored going forward.
Yes.
That's I think the realization.
Right. So, so basically, what do we do with our conference rooms now?
No, that's why it's hybrid. So, Sudhi.
Like, I have 5 at my ground floor, and I see them empty all the time.
You'll have to put up screens and make sure that you have good connectivity and do your...
Okay, great. Mr. Saraf, I'll ask you. You went to National Judicial Academy very recently. You interacted with High Court judges there. How will the whole league, the understanding of law, what is their adaptability? Where is the adaptability quotient there? Because they also have their issues, and the glitches are sometimes they come out in open. And how much technology leapfrogging they have done?
Very interesting question. Actually, I have been going to National Judicial Academy and taking courses for High Court judges for some time. And in 2 years, I would say there's a significant difference. And I remember when I was working for government at some stage, I wrote the electricity law for India. And that was the time when the World Bank came to India and said, you should do universal metering. And everybody said, this is a very bad idea. He said, why? He said, कोई पैसे तो देगा नहीं, मीटर के पैसे और खर्च हो जाएंगे. That was the only issue. The World Bank guy says, if it can be measured, it will be recovered. So please start the process, but at least put the meter. Don't recover, but put the meter. I would say in last 2.5 years, I have started realizing one thing and last session which I did on construction contract for High Court judges were attended by 40 High Court judges. I would say the most interesting part was acknowledgement like metering. That this is a technical issue. This is a commercial technical contract and we are not knowledgeable. I think in my view, that is the first step. If you understand that you need a little bit help, and they are smart people, but if you don't know the tools, you will basically not get the right output because you are just looking a transaction. Like I gave a maths and which I'll give you here, that in Indian judiciary, and I said, we always get a very high paying lawyer walk in and you believe कि यार बेचारा इतना पैसा खर्च कर रहा है तो we must give him a relief.
ऐसा है क्या?
नहीं, ऐसा कई बार होता है. And I was talking to the judges, so I was trying to explain. I said, you remember, you actually make more money by being dishonest and by not allowing a counterparty to enforce law. I think the first question was asked to me was, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is not possible. And I explained the maths. I said, if you see, general corporates, you have a 12% borrowing cost. And if you do not pay, and as per the World Bank report, it takes 4.25 years for enforcing your right at the basic level, at the original side. And it takes $39 to 39 cents to $1 as a recovery cost. So basically, if it is $39, then you have paid 19.5 cents each. And you have got 4.5 years of delay. That means basically the interest outgo is 60 cents. So if you actually don't pay in time, if you are to pay 100 crore, you've saved 160 crores. After 2 years, you will do a settlement for 90 crores.
Yes.
And the guy will be very happy.
Yes.
So what you've done is you've helped people make money. And therefore the most important thing, and I think we had a very good discussion on that. I think the most important thing is to change section 73 of Indian Contract Act. Because if the damages is what was done in 1873, in 2020, judiciary is used to finance business transactions.
Yes.
And that I would say that is dramatically changing. The outlook is changing. And I think they want people, commercial lawyers, because they know law. But I think that perspective, they don't have it because they are very close.
Very good.
And I think the discussion was very, very healthy.
So very well put, and this is the direction we are looking at. Manojji, I'll ask you that there are a lot of young law students who are sitting here, and we keep on getting queries. How is hiring happening in last 1.5 years? The future of law. What do you think? First, you address the question: what we should be teaching in the law school now with the changed scenario, and what we are lacking. We need to quickly adjust to the new normal. Second, how internships and jobs have been happening, how recruitments are happening for these positions in last 1.5 years.
So there's a very interesting remark Dr. Bhasin made earlier in the day about somebody asked a question at the end. Folks who are not yet lawyers, how could they be involved in the profession? And the remark made was that there's so much to do in addition to practicing as a licensed lawyer, to train yourself, to get the experience. This is relevant from the perspective that over the last 1.5 years and maybe a little before that, the appetite for taking in what we called not practice-ready lawyers, I said not practice-ready lawyers, is not there much. In fact, it has been shrinking hugely. We as a firm, we stopped taking, with all responsibility I'm saying this, we've stopped taking fresher intakes, barring 1 or 2 exceptions, for almost more than a decade now. Essentially to bridge the gap between lawyers who are coming out, the quality of lawyers coming out from law schools, and what needs to make them practice ready. We have introduced a program called Fellowship Program. We keep them on fellowships for 6 months at a time for 2 years, and then absorb them once they're ready. So that's one very important part, that in the last 1.5 years, the opportunities for passing out students will depend a lot on how law schools devote their time on making them practice ready. And when I say practice ready, it is not just clinical programs and sending them for internships to law firms or companies. It's about a whole string of skills that are required. Drafting, of course, there are very essential ones, drafting and speaking, but more important ones are the nuanced skills of people handling, peer handling, communications, memory skills. There are a whole lot of things that you would want to have for a good support system to your organization. We've had people who have started as a fresh lawyer, and 3 or 4 of them are partners today in my team. So you know what you need in them and what you expect from them. I think those are the skills that need to be focused on by the law schools.
Okay, my final round is this, and I'll come to Saket. I'll ask you that when it comes to the law and the practice of law, under the new hybrid system or hybrid practice, both corporate side as well as litigation, which are the sunrise area you are looking at? Which are the new 2-3 important sectors you think the young lawyers should specialize, or the law students should specialize, where the opportunities will come which were not there earlier?
See, there are several areas that have come up. They are new age areas, but as Mr. Karanjawala was saying, that there is an increased need for specialization going forward. So initially, I would not recommend that for young lawyers to start specializing too early, because you really don't know where your skill sets lie, where your interests are. But in this now, in terms of new age areas, if you see there are things like the startup ecosystem. It's one of the we are now the 3rd largest startup ecosystem that we have. That has its own nuances, that requires a different type of efficiency to cater to startups, because startups' appetite to buy legal service, get legal services is different. Their requirements are different. They're extremely compliance conscious, and they require, they're quite underprepared, so to say, for business. That's one area. The other side of areas, things like corporate crimes, white collar. These are areas that are increasing. Overall. Sectors, the renewables, these are all sectors that have been there, traditional sectors. But the newer areas are mostly around tech, and you now have a huge fintech market.
Yes.
Now, these are areas which have different laws, and laws are also changing and evolving to cater to these areas. And therefore, being aware, being broad-based is the need of the hour.
Okay.
Slowly but surely getting into a specialized area.
Thank you, Saket. Mohit sir, your last thoughts about new areas of practice for these law students and young lawyers.
I think I would agree that you have to be generalist for first few years, and I would say not first few years, but actually for maybe a first decade. If you're not specialist, because really at the end of the day, when somebody comes to you, he doesn't come and say, this is a fintech issue.
Right.
You have to think like a lawyer. I think when I interview people, I say, does he think like a lawyer? That means you start looking at it, oh, there could be a competition issue here, there could be a labor issue here, and that is what you require. If you become too specialized initially,
Right.
I think in my view, that is good to not work.
Yeah.
So specialization at certain stage is good, but you have to be a general good practicing commercial lawyer. That's
Yeah.
number one. But I would say, apart from that, the new areas, I would say really is that lot of time, when you look at India, we are always behind the curve on regulation. We had Uber here, you have gig economy here, but you did not have regulations for gig economy. All the labors were actually not part of that thing. So I would say right now the biggest challenge is that start helping people to do business without there being an enabling legislation. And I think we talked about predictability of legislation in this country, but actually the problem is you don't have a legislation and the business has started.
Right.
Like Uber, you had to take various tax fee permit in different states. And people started, and then suddenly it became so big that you can't dismantle. And therefore, it is very important that everybody and most commercial lawyers, we look at it and we look at that issue. And that is a general law. That देखो law तो नहीं है. These are the three issues. But overall, this makes a lot of sense. And therefore, I think it is worth understanding the risk and running the risk, and venture capitals put a lot of money on that. And if you're able to do that, I think that is what the biggest area.
Okay. The final question will be an objective round. You want to go back to the normal, or you are happy with the hybrid system?
Well, definitely the change is for permanent, and
Yeah.
very much happy with the hybrid system.
Yeah.
And we should be strengthening this far more.
Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen. This panel has been very good. We adhere to the time. Thanks a lot.